It's yet another beautiful episode of the Lost in Transit podcast. And today I've got in the studio with me an eminent personality, one whose popularity has gone far and wide. And not just because of how tall he is, but because of how sound he is with his business. He's an immigration lawyer with years of experience and loads of clientele. And it's such a privilege, it's such an honor to have him here with me. Ladies and gentlemen, I have with me Chike Ezike. I'm so sorry, I almost mispronounced your name. Please forgive me. Right, how are you?
That's absolutely fine. Good afternoon. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. And thank you very much for coming to the program. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
That's fine.
Right, so forgive me for that. Now, we're going to go straight into it. Let's start with you. You, of course, are Nigerian and you're based here. How did you move here? Tell us your immigration story. Then we can then talk about what you do and how it directly impacts the lives of migrants here in the country.
I have been in the UK since 2009 when I completed my law degree, qualified as a lawyer in Nigeria, and completed my NYSC. Then I came to the UK. Did a master's degree, cross-qualified as a solicitor in the UK, and I've been in the UK ever since.
Okay, great. Right. Where did you do your bachelor's?
I did my first degree at the University of Lagos.
Ah, right. I see. I could
Yes.
tell with the energy. You try, not like you forgot, but you're trying to remember. So you want to call it with some power. Is
I
it?
paused for effect.
For effect. I love it.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. So when you moved to the UK as a newly qualified lawyer, I mean in Nigeria, what were the things that you found different in the legal system, Nigeria's and the UK's?
Honestly, there is no difference with the legal system in the UK and in Nigeria. So it was very easy to transition. Because Nigeria was colonized by the UK, our legal system is exactly the same.
All right.
We still use common law, as opposed to most European countries that use civil law.
Okay.
The subtle difference is just with nomenclature.
Okay.
So in Nigeria, we would use plaintiff. In the UK, we would use claimants.
Right.
So we would probably say statement of case in Nigeria, but we would call it the particulars of claim.
Okay.
We would call it, if you're in court and you want to make any argument, you'll call it your address.
Right.
But in the UK, we'll call it your skeleton argument.
Okay.
But it's exactly the same.
Okay, interesting. Now, before we dive into what we're talking about today, which is, of course, all there is to know about immigration law, let me test your Nigerianness. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about Nigeria. Let's see how well you still remember home.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So, what is the name of Nigeria's national football team?
It's the Super Eagles.
Okay. Great. How many states are there in Nigeria?
There are 36 states.
Okay. Who was Nigeria's first president after independence?
The first president,
After independence.
Dr. Nnamdi
Okay.
Azikiwe.
Nice. Okay. One other one. Which Nigerian author won the Man Booker International Prize in 2021?
2021, that should be Chimamanda
Oh,
Adichie.
brilliant. Final one. Okay. Which ethnic group is the largest in Nigeria?
That I actually don't know. I would say it's probably the Hausa Fulani.
Correct. We are very Nigerian. I wish I had the badge. I'll just hand it over to you. But that's very brilliant. So you still haven't lost touch of home?
No.
Obviously not.
No.
What's your favorite Nigerian meal?
Pounded yam and egusi soup.
Right.
The real pounded yam, by the way.
Oh, who does that here? People pound here.
I do it personally.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So I've got my mortar and my pestle.
Are you serious?
I prefer it that
Do your
way.
neighbors not complain?
No, it's my own house.
Interesting. Quite interesting. Right. Okay. So today we're talking about migration. And of course, you being an immigration lawyer, you definitely must have, seen many cases that border on, infringing on this or that and many, many things. In your many years of experience, could you tell me one recurrent issue that Black migrants always face when it comes to migration and settling in a country like the UK?
With respect to migration, a challenge most people have that I've observed is they don't recognize that the immigration switch is a journey. It's a marathon. Most people think it's a sprint. And after 2, 3, 4 years, they get stuck. If you relocate to the UK and you want to settle in the UK, then you're looking to get the mighty permanent residence, or it's called the indefinite leave to remain.
Yeah.
Then you have no time limit on your visa. You can only do that if you've been in the UK for 5 years or 10 years, depending on the route you're using. The challenge is when most people relocate, before they hit the magic 5 years or before they hit 10 years, they get stuck. And then they begin to complain. And they begin to look for solutions. And they try to look for creative solutions. And in their desperation, they don't get proper advice. And then they fall astray. And if you break the journey within the 5 years or 10 years, it's difficult to right that wrong.
Okay. Wow. Okay. A lot seems to still be unknown by migrants. I say that with all sense of responsibility, because after time, or people just, pack their bags, pay for tuition, and relocate. After time, they don't take time to understand the expectations with respect to where you're going to and what applies. And as you've said, many times when they're stuck, they try to apply the creative way. Right. So do tell me, I pray you, what are the routes, what legit routes to take? Now we're trying to discourage every creative way, right? But let's start from the basics. What are the legit routes that intending migrants can take to get into the country, the UK in particular now? And for each of the routes, what are the expectations, the time, the duration, the expectations, and so on and so forth? Could you break that down for us, please?
So when you relocate to the UK, always have it at the back of your mind that you need something to keep you in the UK, or you need someone to keep you in the UK. Now, depending on what that thing is, or depending on who that person is, it would determine if you can obtain permanent residence in a 5-year period or in a 10-year period.
Right.
So if you come into the UK on a student visa, if you're doing an undergrad course, then that would be 3 years. If you're doing a master's degree, it would be 1 year. Some master's degrees are 2 years because you then do the foundation and then the master's degree. If you come in to do a PhD, then a full-time PhD would be 4 years. But once you're done, what next? You haven't hit the magic 5 years. If you come in because you have a relationship, so you come in as a spouse, or you come in as the parent of someone who is British, then you can stay for 5 years, and after 5 years, you then get permanent residence. The immigration rules are vast. And if we begin to look at each and every option, we'll be here forever.
Right.
But once people have it at the back of your mind, have something or someone, then you can be fine. And depending on what that something is or the someone is, the requirements to satisfy are varied. So if you want to come in on a work visa, it depends on the type of work visa.
Right.
So you can come in either as an employee on the skilled work visa, or you can come in because you have a business you want to set up. So the innovator visa or the global talent visa. And there are a few other categories that have evolved over time and they've been phased out, such as the highly skilled. And back in the day, there was the tier 1 when you could invest in the UK and show you employ 2 British citizens and things like that. So once you know the route, you know what is required for you, and then you know how long the visa would be granted.
Okay. Now, you've been able to do a summary of the journey from leaving the country and getting your ILR. Now, could you tell me what are the likely roadblocks a typical migrant may face that may then, trigger them to go use creative ways? What are the likely challenges, and how can they,
avoid it?
Avoid it, exactly. Yes, please.
Once you've been granted a visa to the UK, that visa has a duration. And you're granted a visa for a specific purpose. You need to ensure that the purpose for which the visa was granted you actually comply with it. So if you're here as a spouse, then you have to stay married to that person. If for any reason the relationship breaks down, you have no basis to be in the UK anymore. So you have to leave the UK before the deadline, before the expiry date of your visa, or you find another reason to be in the UK, then you switch your visa. The challenge is most people don't recognize that with that time limit, you need to find an alternative to then extend it. And they may not find an alternative.
In that time.
So if they conclude studies, for instance, they are unable to secure a job, which would give them a work visa. Or they'll get the mandatory graduate visa, which everyone is now entitled to as a student, which was previously cancelled. But once that is done, that gives you an extra 2 years. They don't have an alternative. Or someone would come in as a spouse, the relationship breaks down, they get a divorce, but then they have no basis to be here. And the Home Office will then curtail their visa. They may have been granted a 5-year visa, for example, and if the relationship breaks down in 3 years, once the Home Office are aware, and there is an obligation for you to inform the Home Office of any change in your circumstance, the Home Office will then reduce or curtail your 5-year visa and ask you to leave within 60 days from once you have been notified. So people get into those difficulties and they don't know how to get out of it.
Wow. And that's when they try to use the creative ways, like you like you subtly put it. Okay, now, so I still got a lot of questions for you, but one of the regular features on here is we take mails from anonymous mails rather from our listeners, and I've got one here from you you rather. It says, "Dear Jakwajantis team, of course, my name is, I'm not going to mention that. I'm currently embroiled in a situation. I finished university for my master's a couple years ago, and I got a job, a sponsored job. That's like, I assume that means that an employer that sponsored him. I was working there, and everything was fine until a few months ago when I was fired. I don't want to mention the reason for the firing, but let's just say it was well-deserved. Now, I am confused. Am I able to go back to my post-study, or must I now find another employer that's able to sponsor me? I guess summary of this is the person, finished, the master's program, didn't opt for the 2 years, opted straight for the COS. Unfortunately, now that has gone south. Now they're asking if they're able to go back to their post-study, or they really now must find an employer that's sponsoring them.
Unfortunately, the short answer is no. You can only switch to a graduate visa if your previous visa was a student visa.
Right.
So if the person has switched to a work visa, so a skill work visa, because they're being employed, they can't switch back to a post-study work visa. It used to be called post-study work visa back in the day.
Right.
Okay. So sometimes people would be on a graduate visa, they then get a job, they switch to the job, things go pear-shaped at work. You cannot switch back. You'd either have to find another employer that is willing to sponsor you, or you then find another reason to be in the UK.
Wow. Quite... Wow, my heart goes out to him. I really hope he's able to find someone to
So what would then happen is the person who is being sponsored, if their job has been terminated, as I said, the only reason why they're here is because of their employment.
Yeah.
If the employment ends, the employer has an obligation to inform the Home Office. However long the work visa was granted, the Home Office will then contact the employee, let that person know that that visa duration has been curtailed, give the person a 60-day window to leave the country voluntarily, or make a new application to remain in the UK for any other reason that they think they're entitled.
Okay. No, I like that. That seems like a leeway, because it means that we're not chasing you. We just want you to convince us, via whatever other reason that you have a need to stay in the country. Is that the case, technically?
Yes.
Right.
So remember, you always need a reason to be in the UK.
Right.
It's up to you to tell the Home Office what that reason is. And whatever that reason is, you make the requisite application, and each application has different requirements.
Right.
And if you can meet those requirements, then you'd be successful.
Okay, I guess that's where you and your colleagues come in, where you help to, advise.
Good solicitors would be able to identify the basis upon which you can stay in the UK,
Yeah.
what type of application you should make, and ensure that whatever requirement needs to be satisfied,
Right.
you can meet it, because you need to provide evidence.
True.
There is no point you applying for leave to remain in the UK on health grounds, but you're fit as a fiddle and you can even get in the ring with Anthony Joshua.
Right.
Your application is going to be unsuccessful.
Right, I see. Okay, you spoke very extensively about the 5-year, the students and everything. But you mentioned earlier the 10-year one. You haven't. Do you mind shedding some light on that one, the 10-year route? What does it entail? Who are those that are eligible for it, and what's likely is there pros and cons between 5 and 10 years?
Generally, if you want to settle in the UK, it's going to take you 5 years.
Right.
Or it's going to take you 10 years. It all depends on the visa category that you are on. There are some exceptions for you to fast track it for 1 year or 2 years,
Right.
but those are for people who are investing millions.
Right.
It's quite rare, and that falls under business immigration. But generally, most people would settle in the UK after being in the UK for 5 years. So if you're on a work visa, you can apply for your permanent residence if you've been on a work visa for 5 years. If you're on a spouse visa, you can. Some spouse visas, depending on your circumstance, you'd be able to settle after 5 years.
Right.
If you have been in the UK under different visa categories,
Right.
without having the full 5 years, then you can now settle under the 10-year route. Say, for instance, you want to mix your student visa, you want to mix your graduate visa plus work visa, and that all culminates to 10 years, then you can do it that way.
Right. Okay, so are you saying now that if we calculate the time spent in the university for my master's, for example, and I've got 2 more years for my post-study,
Yes.
then
So that takes you to 3 years.
that takes me to 3 years.
You can't now get a work visa. And for instance, your work visa is for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then 2 years into your work visa, you then want to add it to the 3 years you've done. You cannot hit 5 years in that route.
So are you saying now that the post-study,
Yes.
I want to understand now the 10-year route thingy. Are you saying if I did my master's for 2 years, for example, did a post-study for 2 years, and I'm so lucky I got an employer happy to sponsor me for 5 years, that makes it 9 years-ish, thereabout?
Yes.
Great. And if by some stroke of luck, I don't know, maybe I do another master's right after the 5 years.
So in reality, if you're on a work visa for 5 years,
yeah.
after 5 years, you can
you're
settle on that
eligible
route.
Oh, I see.
If, for instance, you went to school, did a master's degree for 1 year,
yeah.
then you did your graduate visa
for 2 years.
then you did a work visa for maybe 3 years,
Yeah.
then you went back to do a PhD
Right.
for 4 years.
Yes.
Now, you wouldn't be able to
Sum it all
settle
up.
after 5 years,
Right.
because you've not done a work visa or a particular type of visa category
Right.
for a stretch of 5 years. You've broken it.
Right.
So for you to now be eligible, you then have to go under the 10-year route.
Right. Oh, I see what you mean then. So you didn't have to
You
sum
can
up all
accumulate all of them, but
Right.
you need to have continuous legal residence.
at every point in time.
Yes. If there was a time when you had adverse immigration history,
What does that mean? Sorry.
if you've overstayed.
Oh, right. Okay.
So if you've been clean for 6 years and then there have been an issue
Right.
for 1 year, 2 years, and you're able to regularize your status, the clock starts again.
From the beginning.
Yes.
No way.
The clock starts again.
No.
The clock starts again.
Wow.
So in that example, all the 6 years that you've built up
It's nothing.
is gone. You've overstayed for 1 year or 2 years, and then you regularize your status. The clock would start all over again.
Oh.
And you'll be starting the 10-year route again, because you're now coming from an adverse immigration
Yeah.
position. There are exceptions,
Right.
but generally, that is the position of the law. The difficulty is most people don't know this, and it's a journey of 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
People just think when they're starting out, they're going to get to the end so quickly.
Right.
You need to persevere. I need to make sure your nose is clean. You need to make sure you do not let your visa run out on you. Because once you've broken it, you will not meet the requirements.
So aside your visa running out on you, what are other things that migrants must avoid to ensure they have a clean slate when they're finally ready to apply for, the ILR?
As you can imagine, the UK only wants the best. They only want good people. They don't want anyone who is going to bring problems to the society.
Yeah.
If you have a criminal record, then you would fail the good character test. And with a criminal record, you need to ensure that time has spent before you can now apply. What that means is, if you're convicted of an offense, even though you may not get a custodial sentence, but it will be on your criminal record. And depending on what that criminal offense is, it can affect you applying either for your permanent residence or your citizenship. So even though you may get your permanent residence, usually you can apply for a citizenship naturalization 1 year after you've gotten your permanent residence. But if you have a criminal record, you may need to wait a bit more. Yes.
Okay, that's technical. No, I didn't know that until now. Okay, yeah. Now, if you could advise someone who is back home in Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, wherever, and looking to relocate to the UK, if you could give them 3 solid advice as to some things they need to hold on to strongly from the point when they land in the country to the point where they become citizens of the UK, what would those 3 advices be?
The first thing I would say is, if you come to the UK for any reason, make sure you actually carry out the reason for which you say you're coming to the UK. The second thing I would say is, do everything properly. Do not think, because some other people have tried creative avenues and they were successful, don't follow the crowd. I used to say, follow who know road. Because most people will think, because someone else tried it, it worked for them, let me now try it. If 10 people are speeding on the motorway and they catch 1, you can't say, what about the other 9? Don't hold me responsible. A lot of people don't get that. And finally, ensure you obtain good legal advice at any stage where you think you need it. Don't just rely on AI or Google or whatever. Speak to people who know. Because with that, you get knowledge and you can make an informed decision on how you wish to proceed.
Right. Okay. That sums a lot into those very 3 advice. But this is another question. You guys are very expensive. You guys are very expensive. Why? Tell me why. Maybe you can tell me.
This is what I'll say. What is good is expensive. And you will always find good lawyers, cheap lawyers, but you would get what you pay for. And you're free to make your choice. However, be ready to accept the consequence of that choice. So think about it. You can choose to live in any part of the world, or you can choose to live in somewhere that is more affluent. You can choose to do your shopping anywhere, but the quality would dictate. You can choose to purchase any car. The prices are different, but the qualities would always tell.
Right.
And if you think lawyers are expensive, try doing something without a lawyer and getting it wrong. Then you'll see what is more expensive.
Okay, so now you have made a case for yourselves and your colleagues in a very perfect way. Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, I better just do the right thing right now. I better just pay however expensive it is. But yeah, absolutely, I do understand and I appreciate the service that you and your colleagues render. Do you mind telling us, your name of your, company and how people can reach you?
I work with Universe Solicitors Limited. Universe Solicitors is a full-service law firm that provides services for different areas of law. As you can imagine, there are multiple solicitors in the firm with different expertise. A simple Google search of my name or the firm, Universe Solicitors, would pull it up.
Great. Great. Thank you very much then. And of course, while you are trying to Google Chike Ezike and University of Status, do remember to also very importantly subscribe to the channel. It's called Chapajansis TV on YouTube, and of course please do follow us on Instagram as well. Please do subscribe. That's how we are able to bring very eminent personalities, knowledgeable individuals like Chike onto the show to share with you information that you really do need to know with respect to your migration and relocation journey. On that note, I do have to say thank you very much for your patience, especially, and for the sound advice you've given on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you too for listening. It's been a pleasure being with you and presenting to you this show once again. Thank you very much for always sticking by to watch and to learn. Until next time, do have a great day.